quite delightful was Loki, which wrapped up its first season,
Mm.
and we thought was going to be only season. We'll talk about that in a second. Um, just this past Wednesday on Disney Plus, Marvel turning out that content, man. Just always turning it out. But this was actually Marvel content that I thought was pretty interesting. And we talked about that when we reviewed the first episode. Did this season hold your attention, Dave?
Yes, it did. I definitely liked Loki the most of our three MCU Disney Plus shows to date, and had a lot of hype going in because I was really taken with the original trailer. I thought the first episode did a really good job of setting up our world, our stakes, our lack of stakes, while still being incredibly expository. Like, I was impressed in the early goings how much exposition we're getting from Owen Wilson's Mobius, right? Explaining the TVA, explaining multiverses to the audience. I was surprised how riveting all that just straight info dumping was.
Hmm.
And I think the arc of the show is quite successful. I think there's one choice towards the end of the show that perhaps would make the season even stronger, but it still really lands at the end. And I think that's a stark contrast to WandaVision and Falcon, which had really muted and frustrating finales after stronger earlier stuff in the early going. So yeah, quite pleased with Loki and getting a season two. Definitely not something I expected, but obviously welcoming it.
With WandaVision earlier in the year, we started to see a little bit of the weirdness of the MCU, obviously doing the sitcom style. But beyond that, obviously the end of the season, you see Wanda becoming the Red Witch and all the possibilities that might open up. We know um, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is coming up. Obviously, Spider Man into the multiverse. So the multiverse is coming. That's like a certainty in the MCU at this point. And Loki seems to be like that first step towards really like introducing that and kind of leaning into the possibilities of that. And I think they actually did that pretty tactfully here, right? Because I think there's an aspect of that of the multiverse where things can become confusing if you don't explain it right, where you can kind of get lost. Um, and I think for the most part, the season was laid out and explained pretty well. I never felt lost in terms of the mechanics of things. I mean, obviously, do I understand how any of this could actually happen, like on the actual level of multiverses? I'm not smart enough for that stuff.
Mm.
I'll
That
grasp
thought
the
never
general
crosses
concept.
my mind. I
Right.
don't care about that.
You have to suspend that going in. But I think for the most part, the mechanics of the world that we're jumping into are pretty good. And I think what I really enjoyed and I found impressive about Loki was it did a lot of this ground laying for the future of the MCU, setting up the weirdness, setting up all these different possibilities, the different variants, so to speak, while also being a pretty introspective look at Loki as a character and allowing some real, I think, development in terms of who Loki is, understanding himself, coming to peace with certain aspects of himself. And I think they did that in really interesting ways. Obviously, pairing Hiddleston's Loki with Sophie DiMartino's Sylvie, a female variant of Loki, I thought was a really good choice and allowed a bit of romance with himself in the
Mm.
season, which I thought was
I
interesting.
mean, real romance in the MCU. There's not much
Yeah.
to speak of. They actually let it like really commit, which
Mhm.
which was so welcome. But I think something we talked about going in, and a huge criticism of mine of Falcon and Winter Soldier, was that Loki was actually allowed to be a season of television that worked on its own while also servicing the MCU and the obligations and the things that MCU plot mechanics required, right? Like, it did both. It wasn't just there for the MCU. Like, it actually works as a season of TV. And that's kind of my number one requirement with this kind of stuff. Because if it's just existing to connect our movies, then it actually doesn't really matter, right?
Mhm.
And like Loki going in, I was like, oh well, you know, I don't care that much because at least they're explaining that there won't be any stakes. So even if it doesn't feel consequential, I won't mind that much because it's going to be cool and it'll be playing in a sandbox of sorts. And that was still largely the case. And then they managed to drop a bomb on us and introduce villain of Phase 4. We have to assume. Did not see that coming.
Yeah. Um, I want to save that discussion for the
Hmm.
end, just real quick. Um,
Yeah.
Finishing the point about the Loki kind of coming face to face with himself, and I thought episode 5 where Loki runs into all the variants of Loki. There's classic Loki who's played by Richard E. Grant. I thought great casting in that sense. There's obviously the alligator. Everybody loves the alligator.
Hmm.
uh Fantastic. And then obviously there's like Kid Loki, there's boastful
President
Loki.
Loki. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different versions of himself and kind of all their different takes on the world. And I thought that was really fascinating and helped to bring out the best. And obviously, I think also the relationship between Hiddleston and Owen Wilson on screen, Owen Wilson playing Mobius, I thought was really fantastic because uh, I didn't know how Owen Wilson was going to fit into the MCU. I was kind of nervous because like, he can be just very Owen Wilsony and that can overpower sometimes the movies that he's in. But I thought he was great and
Mm.
loved seeing their chemistry on screen. How did you feel about his performance?
Wow. Wow. No, it was good. I think everyone was immediately taken with Mobius, right? And
Yeah.
totally effective. You know, when you see him come back in where was the place they went when they get pruned? What was it called? They
Oh
have a
God,
name?
I
The
can't
Void?
remember.
No, it had a
Yeah, it
name.
was
I forget.
something like it wasn't like purgatory, right? It
Yeah,
was
some and whatever. Who cares?
yeah,
But like when he comes back, like
yeah,
everyone's like all hyped. That's a fist pump moment, right? And I think that again speaks to how well the show actually works because our introduction to Mobius again is just him info dumping, right?
yeah,
So credit to Michael Waldron and everyone making the script, and credit to Owen Wilson's performance. It worked really well. Looking at the rest of the cast, in the early episodes, I was like, Gugu Mbatha-Raw not doing too much. This is not adding up. So I was kind of
mhm,
not surprised when Ravona had a much bigger role later on
yeah.
in the series. And I don't know about you, but did you see the Timekeeper's twist coming? Because I immediately was like, this is some Wizard of Oz esque shit. Like I saw right through that one.
Oh, you did.
Yeah,
I did
totally.
not see that twist coming, but um, also when it happened, I wasn't like super shocked. I was like, oh, okay, like moving on to something bigger, badder. I think the Wizard of Oz thing is a good analogy for it. Even the storm that was, I think He Who
Yes, right.
Remains was a similar type thing. Um, and you alluded to it earlier, so let's talk about it now. Jonathan Majors shows up in the last episode and gets quite a bit of screen time as He Who Remains, which seems to be a variant of Kang the Conqueror.
Yep.
Uh, you know, Pretty big villain, I guess, like the new Thanos for this phase of the MCU. How did you feel about Major's performance in this?
Yeah. So like going in because we knew that Majors was officially cast as Kang will be appearing in Ant-Man 3. As soon as I saw him, I was like, there we go, right? Like I don't know if the average audience person is like watching that, they're not sure what's going on. And then he refers to himself as a conqueror later on, doesn't actually call himself Kang. But
Mhm.
uh I get the meta-ness of it all. You know what's going on. I loved it because he fucking vamped, bro. It was awesome. And like that's like a 10-second monologue scene, man. Like that is all Jonathan Majors. And I'm just so struck with he went from like uh breakthrough actor nomination at the fucking Indie Spirit Awards to being a Emmy nominated lead in Lovecraft Country and a primetime MCU villain in like a 2 year span. Like Jonathan Majors just fucking skyrocketed, man.
Yeah, he the energy he brought to He Who Remains, this version of Kang the Conqueror who's at the very end of time and seen everything, knows everything's going to happen. Seems a bit senile and losing his mind a little bit. I thought it was perfect, honestly, because I've seen some different analogies to the performance. I think the one that kind of stands out is it did kind of bring a little bit of like Heath Ledger Joker energy, where it's just kind of like you had no clue what was coming next. You had no clue what direction he's going to go. It felt like anything was possible in terms of that performance from 1 second to the next. And I think he actually played like the genuine surprise of not knowing the next thing really well. And um, man, I just was so pleased that we got so much of him because I had a hunch that they might have him like a mid credit scene, end credit scene, something like that, or maybe we see something alluded to him in terms of the timekeepers eventually. But no, we got a whole 35 minutes with him, and it was great. It actually made me really excited for this next phase now because if we're just gonna be getting Jonathan Majors playing different versions of Kang in all these different Marvel movies, like yeah, sign me up. I'm down. I'm
Fuck yeah,
down.
man. Yeah, and like I said, like that's a fact, a bit of subversion that they established a real character on the show
Mhm.
while not detracting from the show. Now, I think thematically, if that wasn't Kang there in the finale, and that was another Loki variant, I think you might have been able to make the season even tighter.
Mhm.
But Kang being there was not only entertaining and effective, but it didn't hurt the season. Like it maybe didn't shouldn't have worked as well as it did, but it really did. So I also I loved episode 3, the Lamentus one. I would love
Mhm.
more of that stuff where they were, I think we're maybe a little past this now, but like uh the TVA stuff, just like going back in time and like doing like adventures. It's like a way to do like uh crime of the week stuff
Yep.
from a traditional procedural, but still being cool. Like
Mhm.
the production values that we know Disney can handle now with the VFX screens. Like it looked really good.
It did look really good, and I agree. I think there's a lot of potential for future shows, and maybe even future Loki episodes because it's coming back for season two. A surprise announcement at the end of this sixth episode. How are you feeling about another season of Loki?
It'll be more. We will definitely get something like Lamentus, I think, again. So I'm down.
Hmm. Yeah.
Whether Kang is as omnipresent in that, I'm not so sure because he'll probably be shifting towards more movie and
Hmm.
more mainstream, you know, obligations. But then again, they do end that season with focusing on the statue of Kang in the TVA. We're in a different situation here, and almost like a hard reset for our Loki character. So
Hmm.
I'm totally down. There's a lot of possibilities, and that's what's so fun about it is the the way they can play with the stakes.
Absolutely. I'm pumped for it. More Hiddleston, I think, is always good. Keep going weird. Um, Waldron seems like he's got to be tapped to be a major part of this moving forward. I mean, obviously, um, we Kevin Feige is the overseer of all of Marvel, the executive producer on all of this stuff. But uh, near the end of the last phase, uh, we obviously had the Russo brothers running things. Do you think Waldron is being tapped for that kind of role?
Oh, nah, I would say no. I don't know if we've had anything like that get presented just yet. Um, what was it? Was it Jack Schaefer who was involved with Black Widow, as well as WandaVision? I'm not sure who it was, but someone was involved in Black Widow in one of the shows. But I actually think this is a good these shows are appearing to be good launching off points for the talents. Notably, Matt Shackman of WandaVision closed the deal to direct a new Star Trek movie for Paramount, and he was highly pursued for other projects as well. So Marvel will have to offer him something big, I think, to keep him in the MCU because
Mhm.
you get a lot of eyeballs, and there are only so many, Marvel directing chances. We just got the Blade director announcement as well today, so yeah. But Waldron, I think deserves a lot of kudos because that writers room and him, I think they exceed expectations.
I completely agree. It was Schaefer, by the way, who was involved with both. So, story for Black Widow, and I think he was the creator of WandaVision. So,
Right.
um, you have to tune into these Marvel TV shows because they have real consequences to the MCU at large. So tune in. You can leave us your thoughts.